And there came a day unlike. Wait, no, that's been done. Who knows what evil lurks in. No, that is that other thing. What has yellow skin and rights? Ah, forget it. You're listening to Panelology. Excelsi, oh, damn it.
Welcome to episode 230 of Panelology. I'm Alex.
And I'm Brian.
How are we doing this week?
There is a light at the end of the tunnel for this, yeah.
And it's not the headlamp of a fast approaching train?
I don't think so, but I guess time will tell.
Do you remember in the old days of Apple's, like, just before, and I think even up through the first iMac, like OS 7, 8, 9, there were different voices you could have Apple's text editor read from?
Yes.
And some of them would actually sing.
I don't know that I remember that they would sing, but okay, yeah.
There was one of them that would sing, like, to the tune of the funeral dirge.
Wow.
And the test phrase, if you wanted, every voice had a different sample phrase. And the test phrase for it was, the light you see at the end of the tunnel is the headlamp of a fast approaching train. Apple used to have more of a sense of humor, is really what I'm saying.
Yeah, okay. That's there were some engineers who took great pride in that, I have no doubt.
Oh, I'm sure. It was a thing of beauty. And my father, back before, like, remote access and things like that were relatively common tools, had a habit of, on, like, April Fool's Day, taking control of other computers on the network throughout the office and making them talk or sing at people unexpectedly. Everyone hated it. It was truly a nightmare, but he got a kick out of it.
I was going to say, everybody but him hated it, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, fun times.
Sure.
Let's talk about comics. We've got a lot of ground to cover today.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know who's not having fun times right now?
Krakoa, Apocalypse.
All the mutant folk, yes.
Oh. Yeah. Ten of Swords, Creation.
Yeah.
The first official chapter in Ten of Swords.
So I also read X-Men number 12, which I did not get to last week in preparation. And you were right. It is 100%. It is the immediate precursor to this. And I would say almost required.
I think it's like this and Excalibur both, I think, are truly required. And if you look at the official checklist for Ten of Swords, not the one actually in the back of these issues, but the full list. While we had a lot of, like, road to Ten of Swords issues, there are only two prelude issues, and it's those two. It's Excalibur and X-Men 12.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah. So let's actually cover what's going on in here, because there is a bit of ground. What we did not acknowledge last week, which we learn in X-Men 12, is that essentially Arakko, the other half of Krakoa that is trapped in this other universe, or whatever, is populated by mutants who Apocalypse, I don't know if we ever learned, explicitly ruled over, but, like, he was their defender, he was their champion, he came here and sealed them off and trapped this conquering force there, but they've been awaiting his return.
Right.
And his wife, Creation, has been, or Genesis, hey, that's where the name comes from, I bet. His wife, Genesis, has sort of been holding down the fort along with his kids and family and sort of the rest of the rulers of this magical mutant society.
Right, and there's a diagram at some point in here that makes it a lot more clear like the symmetry between Earth and what's the name of the whole world that they're in?
Um,
Amalith?
Amenth?
Amenth. That's it. Amenth. So it's like Earth is to Amenth, which is like the whole world, which is more than just these magical mutants, right?
Right.
And then there's Krakoa, which is like the bridge to kind of other world from
Yeah.
Earth.
Via the external gate that was built in Excalibur 12.
Right. And Arakko is like the Krakoa for Amenth. Like it's like the pathway that is the mutant bridge between these.
Yeah.
And then between them all sits Otherworld, which is why Otherworld has been so important lately in the mutant books.
Yeah, it is. Hey, it's the nexus. It is the hub.
Hey.
It's where all of reality converges.
Yeah.
It's that page you're talking about really makes me want to see a map making competition between Grant Morrison and Jonathan Hickman.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if we could take it.
It reminded me a little bit of the DC multiverse map.
Yeah, right.
But
yes.
in a much more like formalist, streamlined way.
Right. Yeah.
Over the course of X-Men 12 and this, though, we kind of get a view into Arakko's modern life.
Wow, you reached hard for that one.
I did, but it made me happy, so
I know it did.
I'm gonna go with it. And basically, it has been conquered, destroyed by what we are told is a conquering force. Good money's on its genesis. And Apocalypse's grandson, the Summoner, who we've seen since a pretty early issue of X-Men hanging out on Krakoa, there where the gate that dropped him off is.
Yeah.
That sort of time vault or whatever. He has told Apocalypse everything has happened and has gone ahead. At the end of X-Men, he goes ahead to give word to Arakko that Apocalypse is coming, and Banshee and Unis go with him.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the top of this, basically, we see the Four Horsemen of Apocalypse leading a raiding party into Otherworld through the rift at Arakko. And we see a tower fall and send message to Saturnine. And then we see Banshee and the Summoner return. Banshee is basically unconscious. He goes to the healer, and the Summoner basically asks Apocalypse to intervene now. And Apocalypse goes before the Quiet Council. They basically say, you're on your own. We want to close this gate. But Krakoa doesn't, because he's in love with Arakko.
Right.
And so I hope you know what you're doing, Two Dots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and essentially they're like, so, like, you can do this, right? Like, first of all, with Krakoa on your side, we can't stop you. But know that this is not something the Quiet Council is approving.
Yeah, we cannot send reinforcements, and Apocalypse is like, fine, I will ask for volunteers.
Yeah.
And part of what I like so much about, especially this section of this issue, is how much more it humanizes Apocalypse.
It really does, yeah.
Because, I mean, he is historically just this force of nature. Like, he literally embodies evolution in some stories.
Yep.
Yeah. The classic line, I am as far beyond you as you are beyond humans, or whatever.
Or whatever, right, yeah.
But in this, like, he is from the drop kind of struggling to keep up with what's going on. There is a personal stake for him. There is a part of his life he has not remembered, or has at least chosen not to acknowledge. There is family, which is not something that's ever really been a thing for him. And there's this idea of reuniting these two mutant worlds and bringing magic together with technology and continuing to advance his cause in this very personal way. And, like, that moment where he says, fine, I'll ask for volunteers, like, the idea of Apocalypse asking for help is kind of terrifying on its own.
Instead of just going and grabbing people and making them do it, yeah.
Or even just acknowledging he needs it, right? That he can't do it alone.
Right. The other thing about this is you mentioned that, where he's kind of struggling to keep up. I think they kind of put the reader in that position too, because there's a lot going on real fast here. And
Yeah.
there's a lot thrown at you as far as like who these people are and how they relate and which sides they're on and like all of this that like it's a very fast moving. You kind of feel like you're struggling to keep up a bit too.
Yeah, and I think some of that is obviously by design, right?
Oh,
Like
sure.
in the same way that House of X Powers of 10 made you ask a lot of questions about what's going on.
Uh-huh.
And in the same way to some degree, like Excalibur has sort of intentionally left what it's really about in the dark until its 12th issue.
Right.
I think kind of both of those threads, which makes sense because this is Hickman and Howard writing together.
Yes.
And those have been sort of the two things they've each spearheaded so far. I like that it feels frantic in that way. But I also think it's funny in another regard because I, after reading this, out of curiosity, read a couple of different comics sites recaps of it just because I was curious how on earth are they going to break this down?
Like, what is their take on it kind of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, in both of them, in totally minor, understandable ways that have probably been fixed by now, but in both of the ones I read, there were certain details that are like, no, that's blatantly wrong. Like, one of them said that Banshee and Unis were both taken prisoner in Otherworld by whatever forces coming from Arakko.
Yep.
And that Cable and Rachel read Summoners went on. No, Banshee was there. Banshee was literally back on Krakoa. We saw
Correct.
that.
Yes.
There's just so much here that, like, I can't even fault them for that because trying to track it all, like, we're not going to touch every piece of this.
Oh,
talking
not
about
even
it.
close.
It would be the entire first hour of this podcast.
Yeah.
It's already at least 10 minutes of it, and we're a third of the way through the issue.
Yeah.
But it's so dense, and you're right, there are so many moving parts and so many either characters and elements and alliances that we are just given at face value and have to accept.
Right.
And in at least one case learn that is not accurate at all.
And honestly, that's the most interesting one because that's the one that we were given clues like super early on that maybe that was the case anyway. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's very much that sort of. I think I've described Hickman's structure on this show before as like he'll write the inner layer of something, and then the next pass sort of spirals and builds out, and will touch back on that first layer, and then the next pass after that sort of spirals around and touches back on the first and second layers. And I feel like it's kind of that. Like, we met Summoner early on. We immediately didn't trust Summoner.
Right.
Even in X-Men 12, Summoner's a little sus.
Yep.
But
you've been given, part of that, though, is because he was introduced so early, you've been given all this time to just see him there.
Right.
And that gives you a bit of complacency, if not trust, right?
Well, and I think there's a certain magic trick in this issue in seeing how much Apocalypse trusts Summoner. It kind of makes you trust Summoner too, because if Apocalypse is going to buy in,
right.
I mean, Apocalypse is supposed to be one of the biggest planners in the history of the Marvel Universe, right? Like, that's his whole thing.
Yeah.
So seeing someone beat him at that game so quickly, so easily,
well,
is almost unfathomable.
Well, except it goes right back to what you said earlier, which is how this story humanizes him so much more.
Yeah.
Because if you look at what it is that he's trusting, right? He's trusting his family.
Yeah, he's trusting his grandchild.
His grandchild, and his children. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, like, that to me is the best thing about this issue. Both sides of this. Both seeing Apocalypse made human, in a way, and also seeing how that erodes what makes him Apocalypse and makes him kind of a force.
Right, right.
It's a really interesting interesting thing to sort of build the rest of this on.
And we've pretty much hinted and kind of given away the next part of this, which is so Apocalypse leads this group of volunteers, which is Havoc and I can't remember what's Banshee's daughter's name.
Siren.
Siren. There you go.
Yeah, Rock Slide and
Monet.
Yeah.
Right. Back to and Summoner, back to Otherworld to go meet with this force, right?
Yeah. Well, they are laying siege to Lady Saturnine.
Correct. So they arrive there, and it is three of the horsemen that Apocalypse originally his children that he created.
Was it not all four?
Are they all there?
I think they're all there.
Oh, it could be. Maybe it is. Yeah. Oh yeah, they are. I see them. Yep. There's one that's not in the picture I was specifically looking at. But it's important to know that we're seeing this part of the story through Phoenix, not Jean Grey, but Rachel, reading Banshee's mind. So Banshee got hurt, brought back, taken to the healers. Cable and Rachel go to see him, and she's like, I don't know what's going on. So they probe, and they're seeing this through his memories of it because he was there.
Right.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And what they saw was essentially Summoner betraying Apocalypse.
Unkindness. Yeah.
Well, specifically Unkindness and Banshee, right?
Yeah.
And Unkindness and Banshee, and Unkindness being captured and Banshee being, hurt and injured. And then he brings Banshee back in order to facilitate, this kind of cover up and to bring Apocalypse to confront this force, right?
Right.
So when Apocalypse gets there with Siren and Havoc and these folks, we see that he is betrayed not only by Summoner, but also by his children, who specifically Summoner and War stab him and mess him up real bad. We don't even know exactly how bad at this point, right?
Right. Summoner, as foreshadowed in X-Men 12, also spends a moment with Rock Slide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He I'm trying to think of something clever to say how he split their relationship, but
well, one might describe it as a tectonic shift.
Sure. Yeah, it was pretty major.
Yeah. Meanwhile, there's Saturnine, who I've said before, I don't know the Excalibur corner very well, the Captain Britain Corps and all of that.
Right.
Is Saturnine traditionally this much of a Machiavellian schemer?
Saturnine is the piece of it I don't know, but I believe so.
Okay.
And so and once again, she's not bad. She's just not good either.
Yeah, she's
totally willing to let these forces destroy each other, right?
Well, and she's willing basically to do whatever it takes to do her job, which is protect this nexus of reality.
Correct.
There are moments, I think, in here where she is actually more sympathetic than she's generally been in Excalibur.
Yeah.
But by the end of this, where she is essentially coercing each side into agreeing to fight each other in some sort of ritual combat, where they each have 10 swords. You see?
I get where it comes from now, yeah.
Also, the tarot thing. We see, again, it was the free comic book day issue, but we see her tarot reading in this. And there's a white page about a bunch of mutants and mystics who have all given the same tarot reading repeatedly in the same night.
Yep.
Is this your tarot reading? If so, we're sorry, is a really kind of funny approach to that. We see her, Saturnine, orchestrate what I'm assuming is the crux of the remainder of at least the first arc of this, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Creation section. There's also the Cable plot. let's talk about the Cable plot in the last third of this.
Okay, well, there's one more thing I want to go through with Saturnine before we shift
sure.
off of it, which is she kind of observes these two fighting, and the way she handles it is essentially like we see here specifically in Otherworld in her domain of Otherworld, just how powerful she is.
Mm-hmm.
Because these two forces, right after they've stabbed Apocalypse, literally she comes down and halts time for she just stops everything.
Yeah.
And then takes Death, the Horseman of Death, and essentially turns him into Chibi Anubis, which is beautiful.
Wonderful. A+.
Right? And then that's where she then kind of unfreezes these two different sides and arranges this contest of ritual combat
You really wanted to say Contest of Champions.
I kind of did, didn't I? Yeah. This secret war of mutants. How's that?
Yeah, they're in her own personal battle world.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's so. And then each of the sides essentially names the 10 swords that will be their swords. And I imagine the next part of this is going to be the gathering of those, right?
Didn't they both name Muramasa?
They do, which I'm super, super curious about. So yeah, like we get some blades which are like already known and the kind of already known where they're at. Like we hear the Twilight Blade, which we know that, the Apocalypse Children, like they already have that, right?
Yeah.
There's some of these which is like the Black Bone of Amduat, which I think is probably what Summoner was wielding, maybe, right?
We know the Light of Galador.
Right, and then on the other side, like we know the Light of Galador. We know where that comes from. And Warlock is named as a sword, which I thought was super funky, right?
Yeah.
Like, ooh, I like that.
Sword Friend Warlock.
And and then the super odd one, though, is they both name Muramasa.
Which is, do we know where that exists in the Marvel Universe right now?
Currently, I don't know. It seems like I heard about it a couple years ago, in something, but I can't remember what it was.
I'm sure it's been name dropped at some point. It has to have been.
Yeah. And specifically, it was something about I know it involved Logan, so I'm thinking it was like with his rebirth somehow, like right before all the Dawn of X type stuff. But I don't know.
Yeah, I'm trying to do a quick Google and see if there's a last mention.
But then we get to the part you were talking about, which is this Cable subplot. So once Rachel and Cable learned that Summoner, basically was betraying them, then he goes to talk to Scott and Jean. Jean, since she's on the Quiet Council, and Scott because he's the general in charge of their, military forces, essentially.
Yeah.
And Scott goes, okay, then I know what we have to go get. And because they had seen some device, and Cable didn't recognize, he's like, I don't know what this is. And Scott, when Jean reads their mind and shares it with Scott, he's like, oh, I know what this is, so I know where we have to go. And there's like not a gate there, so they have to take this teleport mechanism, and they get to this place, and it's some sort of powered down system of some sort. And Cable uses the Sword of Galador to turn it back on, and then we find out that it is
it's swords space based.
Yeah, it's called the Peak, and it is a orbital station of Sword, as in S period O W period O period. Yeah, like the initial, which was the
Sentient World Operations.
Yeah,
Research Division?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So, a few corrections from things we have said and guessed at in the past.
Yeah.
That patch on Abigail Brand's shoulder in Fantastic Four Fallout was in fact a sword patch.
Yeah,
an X patch.
As in this sword, which is now under control of the mutant. Yes.
Yep, it was both. that was Manifold behind her. I thought it might have been. But also I did get something wrong there. While she was not originally introduced as a mutant, she was introduced as half human, half alien. Abigail Brand is mutant, as she revealed in one of the, like, Avengers versus X-Men Consequences books.
Okay.
It hasn't really been explored much since then, but it is on the record that she is, on her human side, a mutant.
Which is 100% exactly the kind of thrown away detail that Hickman would pick up and use as a major point, which I love.
Yeah. Because, like, a lot of her powers have always been assumed to be from being an alien.
Right. And it turns out that may not be the case. But
yeah,
we have also since learned that there is going to be a Sword book coming out.
Spoilers for Solicitations. There's a Sword book starting in December, which is not in the official Solicitations.
Right.
Was in fact announced afterward.
Yeah. And so that shows you the level of how they're incorporating this. This is a major plot point.
And that book will be written by Al Ewing.
And you have to imagine, right, that the fact that they have this huge orbital station called Sword with this whole division and book that's going to be coming out, and it's not mentioned in any way in the 10 swords that either side spoke of, right? That it is like kind of like the 11th sword that is, super critical but not acknowledged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk a little more about what we know about Sword later. The one other thing I want to mention on Ten of Swords is just a quick moment. I knew intellectually that Cable and Rachel were technically siblings, but I don't think I've ever seen a moment where they get to, like, do that. Seeing Kid Cable in particular and Rachel talking about, like, go tell mom and dad.
Yes.
Was kind of sweet in a way I did not expect it to be.
And I've gotten hints of that before, like at some of like the summer's dinners that have happened and stuff.
Yeah.
There's been a couple of comments they've made that kind of make you, but it's still a kind of a new paradigm that I have to stop and think about a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like it.
All right. Moving on. Juggernaut #1. I was so surprised by this.
You and I both. I
picked
go
ahead.
I was gonna say I picked it up because it's a mutant book and it's a first issue, and I try to give a lot of things a chance, especially if there's something that are at least tangential to other things that I'm reading. But I was not expecting this.
No, like I really figured on the sort of Juggernaut's kind of a meathead, and we're gonna get some sort of anti-hero thing, and okay, fine, sort of deal.
Yeah,
and that's really
like almost a Punisher type vibe, where it's I'm not a good guy, but sometimes I do good things, kind of right?
Or I mean, in my head, I had it like mediocre Venom story.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, there you go. That's very fair. Yeah.
Just because I don't like the Punisher. The Punisher is just antithetical to me.
Yeah, well, that's fair.
That is not what this book gives us. This book gives us a Juggernaut who is working in demolitions for damage control. And meets a group of, let's say, rebellious teenagers who heckle him and then run into a really shaky building that he knows will come down because he's knocked down enough buildings to know when it doesn't take much.
Right.
And one of these kids has the ability to basically slow motion down to nothing, and it even stops him, or at least slows him down in a way that he's never experienced before.
Yeah, she calls herself decel, and it's clearly some sort of like draining of kinetic energy.
Right? Yeah, like deceleration.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love that name makes you sound like a battery line.
Yes, that was good.
Because I was thinking it, and the moment when Juggernaut said something I'm thinking, I realized, well, I like this book a lot, actually. It turns out.
It's funny because that actually leads into what is my quote of the week.
Brian's quote of the week.
Yeah.
Quote, quote.
So D-Cell gets injured, and she's in a hospital, and Juggernaut's there, and he says, D-Cell makes you sound like a battery. And she's like, and Juggernaut makes you sound like, well, I got nothing. It's a cool name.
Yeah. I like Diesel. Diesel's a very good character.
She is a good character, yes.
I look forward to their weird adventures together for another 4 issues of this.
Yeah, so you very much get the vibe that, he's like, kind of old school, out of touch, older guy, right? And
Yeah.
like that they're both going to gain a lot out of this kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Well, and she, her whole thing is live streaming and social media, and that is kind of how she keeps herself alive.
Right.
And she ends up suggesting that, you could get a lot of likes and a lot of views if you go fight the Hulk.
Right.
Which I saw some people online, even in the comics industry, who maybe work a little more in independent creator-owned spaces, kind of grousing at, oh, we're playing up Hulk and the Juggernaut. That's never been done. But, I feel like that's kind of the point of this setup, right?
Yeah, I do too.
I feel like it's the nod and wink, okay, we know it's like having the Hulk and the Thing fight.
Yep.
Which we got a really satisfying version of recently in Fantastic Four. But I think this knows and gives us sort of the nod and the wink about, yeah, we know this is an overplayed trope. And I feel like, especially after reading this first issue, this next issue is going to turn that upside down somehow.
Yeah, I think you're 100% correct.
I have a lot of optimism about a Juggernaut book. What is 2020?
The weirdest year ever is what it is.
My pull list is so strange in 2020.
Just like everything else. All right.
Just like everything else. The Immortal She-Hulk, one shot. Speaking of strange upside-down hellscapes.
Yeah. I will say there's 2 things about this. One is you really don't get a lot new about her. Like, there's no real story here as far as, her doing some new adventure or something like that. This is a recap of, the times in her life that she has died, and her kind of exploring, what does that mean and how do I deal with that? And she goes to some, 2 or 3 people and gets different answers about it, none of which fit her.
Yeah.
And then the other side of this is we actually probably in this issue get more about what's going on with the Hulks and, the gamma irradiated folk than anywhere else that has been to this point. This gives us some actual answers.
Are you totally caught up on Immortal Hulk?
Not even close.
Okay, so I don't think I'm going to say anything that this issue doesn't give you.
Yeah.
Then, a lot of what this issue is doing in re-examining the 3 deaths of Jennifer Walters, which is kind of the issue's title,
right,
is so far in the lore of Immortal Hulk, it's totally ignored Jen.
Yes.
Because she's been a piece and other things going on, and it hasn't really made sense to get her involved. So part of what this is doing and going through each of those deaths is explaining by the rules of Immortal Hulk how she has been revived and how it fits into that timeline. So we see her first death when Bruce saved her, the first time she goes to the place below.
Yep.
Now that she has this energy in her and first experiences this, and she just assumes it's a nightmare and kind of moves on. Then we see the second time when she dies briefly during
Civil War II.
And we see her talk to Bruce's father, who is in the place below. And that idea of Bruce's father there and manipulating and watching is something that has been teased throughout the entirety of Immortal Hulk.
Right.
And we just had number 0, which really specifically deals with something he says in passing here about, Bruce killing him on his wife's grave.
Got it.
And then she comes back for the third time during Empire and sees the leader. And this issue very much answers a question that the most recent issue of the Immortal Hulk has teased, which is, we've had the idea of the Green Door since day one,
Yep.
and we saw at the end of that issue of Immortal Hulk, the leader turning the door red and blocking Doc Samson from coming back to life. This issue explains that he has the power to do that and what that means, and basically anyone who comes and goes at his behest now.
Right. Basically, he has been there and observed this, and being who he is, has somehow gained the ability, as he puts it, to change the locks on that door.
Yeah.
So that he can control who can or can't go back through it.
And then, of course, the other piece of this is, because of what he tells Jennifer, I'm feeling good now, so I'm going to let you go, but don't die again.
Right.
She is really, for the first time in her life, afraid of death. And I think that's where this issue sort of leaves her in terms of questions, consequences going forward.
Right. It also, I think, puts her, and I don't know this, but it very much looks like it puts her in a location where they can now easily pull her into the Immortal Hulk storylines, right?
Yeah, I think so. So it
was good.
In a way, it asks more questions than it answers this issue, but I think that's necessary at this point to sort of explain how she's been left out of the puzzle so far.
Well, and the other thing, I don't know if you picked up on the very, very last page, and it's a question. So it shows her back in her bed, like asleep, like trying to struggle with all this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the shadow that is being thrown in from a window outside is very clearly of the leader.
Yeah.
So, like, is he now here in our world to deal with her, or is that just a shadow of his comments? Or, you know what I mean? Is it a metaphorical shadow? I don't know.
I definitely took it as metaphor, okay. But if he controls the door, who knows?
Right.
Well, one thing we know from Immortal Hulk is that whether or not he can cross over, so far he has not crossed over himself. What he does is he takes control of other Hulks. So we've seen him control Rick Jones.
Okay.
And we've seen him maneuver Cataclysm for the Hulk by controlling Rick Jones. So, if anything, it might be a hint at he has some hold in Jin and can take over her.
Oh, yikes.
Or at least that's a third option.
Sure.
Yeah. Suicide Squad number 9.
Wow, I've been talking about this. This was the one.
Yeah, this was the one.
Even though I knew it was coming, like, this kind of hurt a little bit.
I mean, I think that's what's so good about this issue is one, I get why Tom Taylor would say, yeah, you all say there will be no consequences. Well, you know what? Fuck it. Deadshot's gonna die.
Yeah.
Like, it reads as kind of a playful, okay, if you say so, marketing kind of push.
Right.
But there's a certain, I think, psychology to telling your readers.
There was.
Yeah,
in this case,
this is gonna happen.
Yeah, in this case, I think it was totally part of what they wanted to present and how they wanted to present it. Yeah.
Because it's one thing to have this come out of left field. And so, real quick, rough beats of this issue. The Suicide Squad tracks down Ted Cord, is going to ambush him in his office in this island nation he's bought and is building up. And when they get into the building, there is Superman standing in front of a window that's broken with Ted Cord. Ted Cord tied up.
Yep.
And
Superman saying, it's over, I'm going to take him in, he's going to face justice, right?
It's one thing, I think, to read this issue at face value,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a wholly different thing, I think, to read this issue with the expectation that Deadshot will die. When you see that scene, I, at least, immediately was suspicious of Superman.
Oh, sure.
And I don't know that I would have been in the same way if I hadn't known that this was coming, right?
Well, and what it specifically does is everybody buys this, right? Everybody's like, "Oh my God, Superman! We can't go against Superman." And even though we want to fuck up Ted Cord, like Superman's got him, so it's over, right? But because we know what's going to happen, we kind of see it from the same view that Deadshot does.
Yeah, it puts us in his place.
It does, because he is suspicious of this. And he has reasons to be suspicious of it, as we find out. And like he goes through what his thinking is at some point. But then, and by the time he gets through explaining why he knows what he knows, like you're at a point where like this is very much, it made me think of Hitchcock, right? Where, it really is in the suspense and knowing that it's coming is where the tension is.
Right.
And this is coming, and there's this tension, this whole issue, specifically once everybody else leaves and he's there alone with them. You're like, I know it's coming. What's going to happen? Oh.
And like the great thing about that tension is it does really the impossible and makes Superman the issue's villain.
Yeah.
Like Superman is kind of immediately the bad guy here, and that is unthinkable.
Right.
Now, admittedly, Superman is unmasked, and we learn who it really is.
Right. Which I think we won't mention if you know.
No, I don't want to mention it. He would have gotten with it away too if it weren't for these kids and their dog shot.
Their dog shot. Wow. Great name, by the way.
So good.
Yeah, and just kind of how they present that page where it happens is also like chef's kiss. Good job.
Yeah.
And yeah.
There are only 2 more issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of how this issue leaves you, is just that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I felt when I finished it.
Like in a good way.
I like it from a storytelling point, very much so. Yeah, in a good way. Moving
on. The Flash, number 762. Now, you did not get to this one.
I did not get to this one, yeah.
Okay. I don't know that I can wholly address what I like about it without...
Oh, feel free. Yeah.
Without hitting at least one big beat. This is... essentially, after the big, huge, grandiose scale of this war with all these speedsters and all these rogues, this issue is very much focusing just on Barry and Eobard. And we learned recently that, at least Eobard claims, although I like this and I know better than to think this will stick permanently in comics.
Especially
because
Flash.
Comics. Yeah. But I like this idea, and I like at least that we can live in it for the moment, that all of the indecisiveness that Barry has faced in his life and that other speedsters have faced has been Eobard sort of whispering doubt through the negative speed force at them. And what this last arc has kind of done is conflate uncertainty and self-doubt, which I think we can both agree has generally been taken too far in Flash comics over their history.
Absolutely.
Especially with Barry since his return.
It's one of those things where it started out okay and was actually, and people liked it and thought it was a good idea, and I don't necessarily disagree. But then because it was it got used so much that it became a big problem, in my opinion. Yeah.
So where this issue puts Barry is in the position to essentially either have to kill or let Reverse Flash go. And I'm going to call spoilers here, and I'm sorry, Brian, I can't not talk about this. Barry makes the decision that there is one way that he can move forward and move on. Not just move forward, but move on. And that's just to forgive Eobard. And he makes the decision to use the Speed Force in the same way that he created Flashpoint. He pulls it into himself, and as Eobard tries to phase through him, resets Eobard's place in time so that he is now affected by all the changes he's made.
Oh.
And can just go back to the future and live a normal life, never having been the Reverse Flash. And I have to talk about this because I think as a metaphor for letting Barry actually move on, I cannot think of a better way to do that.
No, that's because here's the thing, we may have even talked about this on the show before, right? The act of forgiveness isn't about, the person that did whatever it was. It's about the person it's about the person that was affected by it. It's about the person that is doing the forgiving. That's the person that changes and is affected by forgiving, right?
Yeah.
And
that's what this whole 101 issue run has been built around.
Right. And I don't think there's any doubt. I don't think either of us believe that Reverse Flash won't show back up, right?
Unfortunately, no. That's an impossible thing to believe.
What someone, if they were clever enough, could do is use this as an opportunity to literally start with a blank slate and not not carry all that baggage and everything forward with it.
Yeah.
Which would be super refreshing.
That's really what I hope this makes room for, is letting Barry move out of this place of doubt.
Right.
One thing I also wanted to kind of talk about, and maybe this is a hard question to answer without having read this issue, but I think in general you still can. Back when this run was first announced with Rebirth, one of the things we talked about with Josh Williamson writing is that he tends to tell these long-form stories that build and come back, and you see where the pieces have been all along.
Right.
And that maybe at first they can feel a little slow, but ultimately it's worth the wait to see what he does with that world building. I'll answer first, I guess. I think that he did that successfully here. I think that worked for me. I'm curious what you think.
The only hesitation I have is that I haven't actually read the last two issues. So, yeah. So I'm hesitant to answer, but
Sure.
From the buildup that has come to this point, and where after this discussion we just had, I think I can say yes. Everything that was done to this point feels necessary for this, which to me is the sign of that, right?
Yeah, and I think that's exactly it. Even the arc of this I have enjoyed the least, which was the sort of anti-Flash arc, the sort of Barry gets venomed arc.
Right.
I think I described it as what was happening.
Yep.
I can't imagine this paying off without that.
Right.
So yeah, I'm really happy with how this is shaken out. The only thing I wish I could see what Williamson would do with this new status quo. But I also get walking away from it where he did.
Right. He's essentially left almost a completely new blank slate for somebody to start a new kind of legacy for the Flash, right?
Yeah.
Which is that's hard to pull off with somebody with as much history as he has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and there is one more element of clearing the slate.
Does this have to do with our next book we're going to talk about?
It does.
Yeah.
That's moving on to Dark Knight's Death Metal Speed Metal.
Which, by the way, just for the name alone, props, right?
Yeah. This is addressing kind of the one dangling thread from the middle of this Flash run, because of Heroes in Crisis. Wally.
Yeah.
The relationship between Barry and Wally. And I don't think Barry has seen Wally since Wally went to the Sanctuary.
I don't think so.
Until this issue.
Right.
So you did get a chance to read this.
I did.
What did you think about this one?
It did, and I think maybe it even meant more to me because I grew up with Barry as my Flash. And like Wally as the Flash, like I obviously knew and accepted it, and read a bunch of stories with it and all that. But people talk about how is your Flash Barry Allen or is your Flash Wally, right?
Yeah.
My Flash was Barry just because that's how I was introduced. That's how I grew up. Everything else, I was super happy, of course, that it was Wally that inherited that mantle. But I get the feeling, and maybe I really kind of understand that in spite of that, and in spite of the fact that his run was actually even longer than Barry's, right?
Mm-hmm.
That he was always, it's still in Barry's shadow, right?
Yeah.
It was Barry who inspired him and who was the Flash, which is, Barry never had from Jay Garrick, right? This very much kind of like that those Flash issues that we just talked about, very much kind of resets and clears that away, right?
Yeah.
In Barry talking about, no, you really aren't in my shadow. Like, you really are your own Flash now, right? Just like to a point, like, and there was always this thing where he was the Flash, but only if Flash wasn't there, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
He was first backup Flash.
Right. And
He was the Legion of Backup Flashes.
and it this one really, to me, made it feel by the end of it that he was much more like Barry and Jay are to each other, where
Mm-hmm.
they are both equally Flashes, right? Because Jay never felt like a backup Flash, and Barry never felt like a backup Flash to Jay. And you could say Jay maybe felt like a retired version, and certainly in some cases, that's how he's portrayed.
Yeah.
But like both of them equally felt to be fully the Flash. Wally, I think, finally gets that from an acknowledgement of even those people like me who grew up with Barry as their Flash.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I'm glad that I don't think I ever really thought about the fact that Barry would have been your Flash.
Oh, yeah.
Just knowing how much of the Flash's history is in fact Wally.
Right.
So I'm glad to hear that it works, even given that, because I don't know that I actually have an answer to who is your Flash. While I've been reading comics, Barry has been the Flash.
Right.
What I really came to first in terms of knowing the Flash was the Justice League animated series.
Mm-hmm.
And that was Wally, but that was Wally in a way where, like,
Wally kind of,
I don't know, it was
being portrayed as Barry. Yeah.
It was dozens of episodes before it was even acknowledged that he was Wally, right?
Yeah.
Like, he was just the Flash kind of eternally. And I imagine had I known that at the time, like, the difference in the belts in their two costumes, I would have caught it. Like, Barry's is straight across and Wally's is pointed. But no, I did not know that at that time. So, like, in a very technical sense, I guess it was Wally, but the Flash was the Flash. The Flash was not his secret identity.
Right.
Is really
right.
kind of where I came from.
Yeah.
And it still worked for me. And I figured I was probably an easier target for it than someone who did grow up on Barry.
Yep. The other thing this gives us is this fully reinstates literally everything about the Flash family history.
Yes.
Is now fully back in play and acknowledged and there. And like everything from Barry and Jay and their relationship to Barry and Iris, being who they are to each other, to Linda recognizing Wally and his kids being there,
Yeah.
to you know, Jesse Quick.
The equation.
And, yeah. The Speed Force equation is used in this, and like, what? What's the last time that got referenced? All the way up to literally Avery, right?
Yeah.
And so like all of it, and I love the fact that this is now all back in play.
Yep. I agree. Moving on. Action Comics 1025.
Oh, damn. I was not expecting this in this issue.
Yeah.
So we find out why what's her name? Leone, Marisol Leone.
Yes.
Why maybe she was able to gather the power that she did,
Mm-hmm.
and why who was it, Gloria?
Dr. Glory?
Dr. Glory, that's it. Why she kind of knows as much as she does about some things.
Yeah, of all the things that happened in this issue, learning the secret origin of Dr. Glory was not something I expected to
Right?
happen.
And we find that out in the first few pages. Because
Yeah.
we find out that both of them are actually from Earth 3.
Which brings me to the question, have we had more than one Marisol Leone running around this entire time?
I don't know the answer to that. And is one of them evil and one of them not, right?
Right? Because, like, if one of them is from Earth 3 and evil, then it stands to reason there is a good one on Earth 0.
Correct, because that's kind of the whole thing with Earth 3 is everybody is their moral opposite, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We get 3 more issues of this, and I cannot even begin. I think there's definitely room to end this in 3 issues, but I feel like it's only going to get bigger and crazier from here.
Yeah, so we find out that they're both from Earth 3. And then the other 2 things I think that are in this are, one, Dr. Glory then brings someone from Earth 3 that is her break glass in case of.
Yeah. Basically a parasite that's actually good at killing supers.
Yeah, which I'm trying to remember this because the Earth 3 stuff, I know the stuff that I've read, but I also know there's stuff about Earth 3 that I haven't read.
Well, and Earth 3 gets retconned so much. I mean,
right.
Okay, DC Multiverse in general, but like, even the basic rules of Earth 3 have a habit of going back and forth. Like, are they antimatter? Can they touch their Earth 0 counterparts? I think, like, right now they're not antimatter, but that.
But then aren't some of them dead right now?
Well, here's the.
Yeah.
Here's one of the, like, things that have not gotten light in Rebirth, right? At the end of the New 52, like, Power Ring was dead.
Yep.
And admittedly, what we see here is a flashback. Who knows how far back? But Power Ring is dead because that's where Jessica's ring came from.
Yep.
Johnny Quick, or whatever his name is, may have been dead too. Wonder Woman, or Superwoman, rather. Superwoman had a child.
Right.
And was imprisoned somewhere. Owlman was, like, in hiding at large on Earth 0. I forget where Ultraman was left at the end of New 52. But he might have been dead.
That's what that's really where I'm wondering and what I'm coming to from this, because I think this parasite killed him.
Well, if he killed him, that's a different version of history than what we have seen in the main continuity comics. I think what I'm coming to is even the recent history of Earth 3 may not be something they're sticking to.
Got it. Well, and
post Rebirth, because I mean, Rebirth has soft changed so much continuity in history anyway. There may just not be a clear, or maybe we'll get it soon, clear internal answer to, well, okay, how does that affect what's happened on other Earths that have
you know what else
crossed over?
Just occurred to me is there's nothing that tells us that this parasite is coming from Earth 3.
That's true too, because we know she can hit all kinds of multiverses.
And very possibly the person that she's communicating with on those other is her alternate self, right?
Yeah. Well, and I also want to just real quick acknowledge we did see Earth 3 in Young Justice, and there was a power vacuum there. So at the very least, the crime syndicate is not on Earth 3.
Correct. Now, the other thing is, I know I have seen this parasite before, and I cannot remember where, but I know I have, and I don't remember where.
Yeah, I'm
The point,
It did not immediately look familiar to me, but that means nothing.
yeah, the point being, it is very much a parasite that can and is capable of and will kill like Superman, Superboy, Supergirl, like superpowered Kryptonian folk. And things do not appear to be going well for them by the end of this issue fighting him.
No. Somebody rushes in.
It's not
And
Magnus.
that was rushing in was maybe not a good life choice.
Like maybe an end of life choice even. Wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is going places. This is another one that's not afraid to tell some stories that may actually have some impact. I love this in DC right now.
Yeah, me too. I mean, and I think this is I hope this is, it may just be that there are a handful of creators who have been given license to do that moving toward whatever post-death metal generations status quo they're building toward.
Yep.
But I hope that it's not just in service of that, and we can keep seeing things evolve and change and new ideas come. Like, going back to the Flash, like, I want to see a Barry who gets to live in this post-Reverse Flash world.
Yep.
I'm bummed Bendis is leaving the Superman books, but I'm also so excited to see how he wraps it up. It's
me
a
as
huge
well.
conflict.
Yep.
All right, last one, An Unkindness of Ravens, #1.
This is a new book. This is by Boom, being put out by Boom, and it is Dan Panosian, Mariana Ignazi, and Fabiana Mascolo. This is an interesting kind of, I would describe it as an amalgamation of books. There's a bit of like a Buffy type vibe in that it occurs at a high school. There's a bit of a almost, I would say almost Sabrina, the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina like thing, in that, there's clearly something going on in this high school that's like a mystery, but like not overt. So there's this girl named Wilma who, this is clearly her first day of high school when we see her and are introduced to her. And then we kind of get like immediately get a flashback to her dad dropping her off at school, right? This is the town that he used to live in as a kid called Crab's Eye. And basically their whole family was in a car wreck when she was 3 years old. The mother died and her sister died, and her dad suffered injuries, like had back issues and leg issues and that kind of thing. He has not worked since then, but has this new job that has brought him back to Crab's Eye. So she is now starting in high school. And like one of the first things she runs into is all these people staring at her, and she's not really sure why, until at some point she gets to the bulletin board and sees a poster for a missing girl named Waverly Good, who just disappeared and looks almost exactly like her.
Huh.
Yeah. She is, like assigned a locker and goes to her locker and opens it up. And there is this glowing purple script inside that says, "Welcome to Crab's Eye. Meet us after school by the birch tree." That nobody can see but her.
Of course.
And then immediately she turns around and what is 100%, this is the other piece that's thrown in here, which is 100% the Mean Girls, the Queen Bees, show up, and for some reason are not immediately disliking of her, which is also curious to everybody because, she's a new girl. Of course they're going to be mean to her.
Mm-hmm.
And we get this kind of stand down conflict, like the standoff between the Mean Girls and this group of 4 girls who are like clearly like the goth chicks that are called the Ravens.
That's so Raven,
right? One of them has super short cut hair with an eye patch. One of them has a shaved head with mohawk and lip piercings, and like very much like the punk / goth folk, right?
Yeah.
They kind of had this stand down and they turn away from each other, and then we get this kind of almost a mirrored conflict between who is the father of the main mean girl and the principal, who very clearly kind of, like I said, mirror this standoff between the two groups of girls. In that he is the super rich person in the town who is used to getting his way and owns everything, and the principal who is not afraid to stand up to him. We get a scene where, I should also mention, she has immediately met, like the first person she met is this boy who is kind of introducing and explaining like who these different groups are, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then, like, as soon as these groups show up for different things, like at lunch, the mean girls show up and tell him to get lost, and he's like, "Yep, I'm out." Right? So, but like, don't make her leave because they want to talk to her. And it turns out that there's this thing where like maybe both of these two groups are kind of trying to recruit her to their side, and like we have no idea why. And yeah, so she chooses after school to go meet the Ravens. And the final panel is like one of them, the girl with the eye patch, lifting up her eye patch, and we see that like her eye glows underneath it, and there's clearly something magical going on there, and like that's it. So essentially, we are presented with an introduction to like names of these characters and general places, and then a whole lot of questions about, okay, what the hell's going on here, and that's it. I really like it. It is very definitely
Cool.
There's nothing like mature about this. So I would not, there's no, probably more mature than like a Lumbergirls type thing, but not like
Lumberjanes.
that's what I meant. I'm sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
Lumberjanes. But uh not anything that would be, like a grim adult comic in this.
Gotcha.
So super accessible as well. Like I said, a lot of Mean Girl meets Buffy, maybe meets uh, Sabrina vibe.
Cool.
Yeah, I like it.
Awesome. Is it still good? Wind number 4. Wind and friends slip out through the sewers, but realize that making their way ahead may not be as easy as they thought once they get out of the city.
Would you say that making their way in the world today takes everything they've got?
I would, in fact, say that. In fact, I might have stumbled trying not to make those words come out of my mouth. Aquaman number 63. This is the second half of the Jackson Hyde and Zeeble story. He helps fend off the trench invasion and gets somebody's number and tells off his dad. It's great. Batman Beyond number 47. Terry and company finish their raid on the Death Star and save the world just in time for Booster Gold to show up to need Terry's help to save Batman's legacy. This series is ending in 3 issues, so I think it's definitely in its end game here. Batman Superman number 12. Batwoman and Steel get a call from the Batcave because Batman and Superman have gone missing after Brainiac merges with Batman and Superman's villain tracking database and kidnaps them to the moon.
Oh boy.
Deceased. Hope at World's End number 10, Brian.
We see how Talia would deal with dispensing justice. We see Black Manta get dealt with in this world, and we find out what happens when Black Adam and his cohorts show up on the island that the kids were sent to keep them safe. Oops.
Oh no. Justice League Dark number 26. In our second tarot-themed book this week, Madame Xanadu deals some cards to Constantine, who maybe should have stayed for the last card in his reading. The Amazing Spider-Man Sins of Norman Osborn one-shot. We're actually a week late to this one because Diamond and shortages. But this is a necessary chapter in Amazing Spider-Man. Not only does it give us the formation of the Order of the Web, but it tells us why all the other Spider folks want to stop Peter, and gives us a look at Peter and Norman trying to save themselves together in Ravenscroft. Daredevil number 22. Matt and Foggy prepare for Daredevil's defense as Daredevil calls Iron Man for a favor in defense of Hell's Kitchen. Venom number 28. We learn the identities both of Codex and whatever the name of the symbiote hunter who's been hunting Venom is. I can't remember his code name. Whoops.
Can't help you.
Yeah, I know. I just keep calling him by his actual name in my head now because it was a good reveal. The Autumnal number 1. This is a new series from Vault about a woman and her daughter who are both, let's say, a little bit combative, who get called back to their hometown when the main character's mother dies and leaves her the house, and this town is spooky as fuck. I'm gonna try to coerce some of the others into reading this so we can talk about it in the Spooktacular.
Okay.
That includes you, Brian.
I know.
Shadow Service number 2. After Gina has been trapped by MI666, we learn why they want her, and she goes on the run. December 2020 Solicitations, which we are going to do with a swiftness.
Yes, let's do it.
From Dark Horse, Afterlift is coming out in trade. I believe we talked about the first issue of this way back. This was a Comixology first digital-only book that recently won the Eisner for Best Digital Series. Written by Chip Zdarsky, art by Jason Lee, colors by Parasoline. This is about a rideshare driver who ends up picking up a fare who is supposed to be dropped off in hell, and is not cool with that, and goes on the run. From DC...
Oh boy.
Batman Catwoman 12.
12?
Sorry, 1 of 12.
I was like, 12? What? All 12 of them this month. No. Yeah, come on. It's Tom King going back to... First of all, it's Tom King writing a 12-issue series. We know how much that is. It's Tom King writing Batman. We know how good that is.
Specifically writing Batman and Catwoman,
and it's Tom
which
King,
is the best
right,
part.
And it's Tom King writing Batman and Catwoman. And to point out, this is actually telling a tale across 3 different timelines. The past, when Bat and Selina met. The present, when, what's going on is what's going on. And then we also get a return to the future that was introduced in the Batman Annual, where they are married and their daughter Helena is Batwoman.
Yeah.
Holy crap, I can't wait for this book.
There is maybe one more point that is made very evident in promo art and that King has talked about on Twitter. Do you know who the villain of this is? Or at least a villain of this?
I do know who the villain of this is.
Who that?
You're speaking of Andrea Beaumont, i.e., a.k.a. Phantasm?
Yep.
Yeah.
That would be it.
Oh, boy. Yeah. This is going...
Batman, Black and White, number 1 of 6.
This is... these are like anthology books, right?
Yeah. I don't think this needs a ton of explanation. We've talked about Harley Quinn, Black and White and Red.
Right.
We've talked about Wolverine, Black and White and Blood. This is what both of those are alluding to with their titles.
Yes.
This is a series that DC releases periodically in anthology form where they give... No, not you, Siri. Where they give high-profile writers and artists short Batman stories.
Right. Yeah, and there's some interesting people that have been lined up to do some of the, like G. Willow Wilson's doing one, which
Yep.
I'm interested in. Yeah, so it should be good.
Saladin Ahmed, I think is
so.
on the
Yep.
slate. Yeah. All right. Endless Winter.
So I listed all of these as one big blob
Yeah.
because it makes sense.
Same.
So there are, I think it's 9 issues, and this is an event book for DC that's being released all entirely in 1 month. Like,
Yep.
holy cow, that's amazing. But they are very specifically tied into some, like they are in order, kind of like Ten of Swords is like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. Like, they're telling you what order these are in.
Yeah.
Um,
Here's the list real
okay,
quick.
yep.
Justice League Endless Winter 1,
Mm-hmm.
The Flash number 767, Superman Endless Winter Special number 1, Aquaman number 66, Justice League number 58, Teen Titans Endless Winter Special number 1, Justice League Dark number 29, Black Adam Endless Winter Special number 1, Justice League Endless Winter number 2.
Yes. And this is a story about, as they describe it, an extinction level event that forms as like this winter storm at the former site of the Fortress of Solitude. If you're not aware, the Fortress of Solitude recently in the Arctic was destroyed, and Superman has basically refounded his Fortress of Solitude in the Bermuda Triangle.
Yep.
And bad things happen here. There's a couple of super interesting things. I'm just going to mention from the first solicitation of the first book, which is Endless Winter number 1. And that is that somehow, like, Queen Hippolyta is tied into this, and Viking Prince is going to be in this, which I'm super excited about.
Yeah.
So they're including some odd things in this, and I'm super interested to see how it all ties together.
I'm not sure if there's an entire spin-off series or what coming out of this, but I have seen reference to this group being referred to as Justice League Viking.
I would imagine a lot of it has to do with how well this does and how well it's received. Yeah.
Yeah. And every issue of this has the same writing team.
Yes, yeah.
It's
Andy
Ron Mars and
Andy Lanning.
Yeah. Yep. Moving on to Generations Shattered number 1. This is picking up the thread from the Generations story in Detective 1027, which I don't think we talked at length about last week. Have you read that yet,
I have not
Brian?
read it yet. Nope. You know how my week's
So, yeah, that's fair. The general kind of setup, what we know is in that story, Batman is following a heist in the Gotham City Museum. And as he is there is this explosion that we see kind of fragment across time and reality. We see like 8 different Batmen from 8 different eras in this sort of like spidering crack pattern in a double page spread, all in this place in this same place in the museum, as this shattering happens everywhere. Every win across the multiverse or creates a multiverse. What exactly it is up in the air. But then Commandy, with a robot arm, shows up, sent by Booster Gold, to come get the original 1930s Batman to come help save the multiverse.
So Batman Noir? Like Spider-Man Noir?
Like giant pointy ears.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. Giant pointy ear Batman.
Okay.
Like pointy floppy ear Batman.
Yes.
This mentions that the original Batman, Commandy, Starfire, Sinestro, Booster Gold, Dr. Light, Steel, and Sinestro.
Again.
Yeah, which is either a typo or just a great tease. Are trying to save the multiverse before time runs out. I think I saw a headline saying there's actually a second Generations book that will be out. This one is actually, if you look at the on sale date, out in January, even though it's December solicitations. Right. I think that they've put out a separate press release that says there's a second one that will actually be out in December before this, but I'm not 100%.
Well, and I think I'm betting this is kind of taking the place of what was going to be Generations, right?
Yeah, Jim Lee has talked a little bit about there was an expectation, I think from the original Solicitations for Generations, that there was going to be like Generation 0, Generation 1, all the way through Generation 4,
Right.
and setting up what people were calling 5G, a fifth generation that would... There was talk that what it was doing was setting up more of like the Young Justice, Teen Titans roster as sort of taking over the mantles of Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, etc.
Yeah.
I think it can kind of see in stories and pieces of where things might have been headed that way. But none of that is happening in that way, if
Correct.
it ever was.
Right.
Like, a lot of that talk was speculative. So this is definitely taking the place of what had been solicited as Generations, but we don't...
But it's not the same thing, right? And that's kind of my point. Yeah.
And we don't know if it's going to have that kind of continuity-wide effect. DC is very merry multiverse.
This is their holiday anthology, book of different stories, and the fact that it's taking place across the entire multiverse makes me happy, of course.
Yeah, that I've kind of gotten to the point with the holiday anthologies where I really just pick them up depending on how many creators I love they've crammed into one.
Yeah.
But the multiverse premise alone may sell me on this one.
There you go.
Speaking of creators I love, Jenny Hex special number 1.
I was going to say, do you know what book I was most looking forward to on this list?
I mean, I think just at face value, Jenny Hex special number 1 might be it for me.
Like you like the title. You don't even have to tell me who the creative team is.
Yeah.
The fact that it's Jenny Hex, like I'm all in already.
But Magdalene Visaggio is writing, which makes me even more excited.
Yeah.
And she's tweeted a little bit about this. Really, her approach to this, what she is doing with this issue is, we don't really know much about Jenny Hex or her background or whatever. So this is really just Mags trying to fill out that world as much as possible. Not with the explicit goal of setting up an ongoing, because unless she's just being very coy about it, there's not one yet. But kind of populating that world so that if there is one, whether she writes it or someone else does, there are toys in the toy box.
Yep. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I want it. This will be my Christmas present right here.
Yeah. Well, it's on sale December 29th, so maybe a little late as a Christmas present.
You get my point, though. Yes.
I do. Also, it introduces a new villain called Three-Eyed Jack.
Yes.
Over at Image, I wondered if you were going to put this one on your list, because I was very excited for this based on the creative team alone. Homesick Pilots number 1.
Yep.
Written by Dan Waters, art by Casper Wingard, who's the artist on Wind right now, and also did Peter Cannon Thunderbolt. This is set in the summer of 1994. There is a haunted house walking across California, and inside it is Amy, lead singer of a high school punk band who's been missing for weeks. The solicitations ask, how did she get there? What do these ghosts want? And it compares it to Power Rangers meets The Shining.
Like, that alone, like, I don't know who wrote the copy for this solicitation, but they get all the credit for this, because that line right there alone, expect 3-chord songs and big bloody action that's Power Rangers meets The Shining. Yes, really. That won me. That put it on my list right there.
Moving over to Marvel.
Oh my God.
We have the first 2 issues of King in Black, which is a 5-issue miniseries. We've known for a while Null is coming. Null is here. He arrives at Earth with an army of thousands of symbiote dragons, and Eddie Brock's gotta stop him. If you've been reading Venom, then there's no way or reason not to read this. It would be kind of wild at this point if you're still reading it to hop off for this. There are also some tie-ins and crossover issues. So, real quick, actually starting in November, there's a Symbiote Spider-Man King in Black miniseries. The second issue of that is out in December. This is like the recent Symbiote Spider-Man set back in time when Peter had the symbiote. Black Cat comes back with the same creative team and a new #1. And the premise of this is that Null has pissed off Felicia, so Felicia decides to get revenge by stealing something important to Null. A one-shot that I alluded to last week, King in Black Iron Man Dr. Doom #1. I was not joking when I mentioned an issue about Iron Man and Dr. Doom teaming up to save Christmas. They're fighting symbiote Santa Claus.
Yeah, I just can't get into the whole Null event, and I don't know why. Every indication is I would probably like it, but I just can't do Venom, and I don't know why. But I might have to do that issue.
Yeah, the Venom arc right now is interesting to me in that regard, because I'm not a big anti-hero person,
Right?
But I actually really have enjoyed what Cates has been doing in ways that I don't think I would have expected, even just based on solicitations or someone telling me what's going on. I'm a little surprised that I'm still in it, but I am very much in it and enjoying it. King in Black Immortal Hulk #1. You can do the math of what that issue is all about. There's a King in Black Namor miniseries, 5 issues, both 1 and 2 are out in December. The Union #1, which is a British superhero team. I think this is an ongoing. I did not actually pull over all the solicitation copy for these into my notes. But it's a new UK based superhero team, and it's doing that thing that is sometimes harder as a start for new books, but it's starting as a tie-in.
Yep.
To an event. There's the King in Black Handbook, and then individual issues of Venom, the Atlantis Attacks miniseries, its last issue specifically, and Spider-Woman will all have King in Black crossover issues in December.
Yeah.
MODOK Head Games #1 of 4.
Well, I mean,
in this house we clap for MODOK.
I mean, it's a MODOK miniseries, and one of the writers is Patton Oswalt,
who is the showrunner on the MODOK series for Hulu.
Like, okay, like you got to pick this up just to see what it's about, right?
Yeah.
Come on.
And then it turns out it's about MODOK being haunted by memories of a family he never had.
I love it.
Yep. Heroes at Home #1, Brian.
So there's 2 reasons I'm picking this up. One, it's Zeb Wells is writing basically what the Marvel superheroes are doing during their self-quarantine, which just,
now,
in and of itself is just, it's such a ridiculous, unique concept that I want to see what the hell. But honestly, what's really selling me is the fact that the art on this is Girihiru. God, I can't.
Gurihiru.
There you go. Which I just absolutely adore.
Yeah, they are fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, do you know, is this a collection of the covers that have been coming out, or is this at least partially new content?
I think it's new content.
Cool. Because they have also been putting out covers that are Heroes at Home variants. Have you seen those?
Some of them, yes.
Yeah.
I don't think, part of it is it's 80 pages. It's an 80-page one-shot. And I don't think there's 80.
There are not that
right.
many variants.
Yeah.
Cool. How about the Chris Claremont Anniversary Special? Now, I'm not familiar with this particular X-Men character. What series is he? No, I mean, it's celebrating the writer Chris Claremont.
Yeah, and it with a new story that's Danny Moonstar drafting basically going across time and space. I would assume to visit all of like the major times
Exiles?
the major times and characters that are Chris Claremont created people. And I grew up with Chris Claremont X-Men, so that's my jam. Yeah. I gotta have this. So, yeah.
I mean, I basically did too. I grew up on the animated series, which was
based
just that.
Yep.
Fantastic Four Road Trip #1. This is another of the like Fantastic Four one shots that we've seen over the last couple of years that tie in and just show us different moments between Dan Slott's run. A lot of those have been Jerry Duggan. This one, however, is Christopher Cantwell, and sounds like it's gonna be some body horror. The Fantastic Four try to take a vacation. Reed can't stop obsessing over science. And, as the solicitation puts it, he brought with him gruesome and terrifying side effects from his latest specimens.
Yeah.
Then, of course, at Marvel, Sword. We talked about this earlier.
Yeah.
I don't think the basic premise of this spoils explicitly anything in Ten of Swords. Instead, I think it's easily understandable as sort of part of those early seeds that House of X Powers of 10 laid. This is the X-Men taking Krakoa to space and starting to think about what they're doing as not just terrestrial, but building out their presence across the universe. So we've seen in issues of New Mutants the talk of setting up a colony in Shi'ar space, and we've seen talk in House of X and Powers of 10 of a mutant refuge in space, for instance. So, like, I think this is going to kind of connect the dots between some of the horrors we saw in House of X and Powers of 10 and some of the things that are happening now and how one might lead to the other.
Cool.
Yeah. Then at Vault, there is a book called The Picture of Everything Else, which is also written by Dan Waters, who just anything vaguely horror that Waters writes, I'm going to read at this point. Artist on this is Kishore or Kishori. I'm not totally sure. Sorry. Mohan. You're familiar with The Picture of Dorian Gray, right?
I am.
This is the picture of everything else. Basically, rich socialites keep dropping dead, and someone comes across portraits damaged in the exact ways that they died.
Yeah, I did read the solicitation for this, and I was like, I should probably put this on my... I don't know why I didn't, but yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I want you to stop and think about how I've convinced you at this point to read Coffin Bound. Do you really want to have to catch up on another Dan Waters series that I'm gonna talk you into?
No.
I mean, Deep Roots, you read Deep Roots, you like Deep Roots.
Yep.
Same writer.
I know. Well,
Okay.
yeah, like I said, I totally get it. And,
Yep.
how, we already talked about Homesick Pilots. I'm getting that one.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yep, just twisting your arm.
I know.
All right. A little more rapid fire now. Over at Ahoy, Second Coming, Only Begotten Son, number 1 of 6. We've talked a lot about Second Coming. It sounds like a prequel series from the same creative team about the infant sun star on the doomed planet Zirconia and his eventual coming to Earth.
Okay.
Over at DC, here you go, Brian. Another trio of Dark Knight's death metal one-shots. The Secret Origin, The Last Stories of the DC Universe, and War of the Multiverses.
Yeah, The Last 52. War of the Multiverses. Yikes.
Oh, yes, right. Sorry, the title on that one. Every other one has been Dark Knight's death metal. This one's just death metal, The Last 52.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, War of the Multiverses.
Oof. Yeah. I mean, it's more death metal one shots. I'm gonna get them and read them because.
Well, and this is the literal end game for death metal. In the December solicitations is number 7, which is technically like January 5th or something like that. But like we are at the end of death metal in December. Along the same lines, Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Crisis on Infinite Earths, Dark Knight's Metal, and Wonder Woman War of the Gods.
So yeah, these are the ones where basically we get these classic storylines retold where the bad thing that they were trying to stop actually happens, right?
Yep.
And specifically, I just want to point out the fact that like this has got to be like one of the most meta type things ever, where we have a Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Dark Knight's Metal number 1, where it's Dark Knights, which is where we found about and where the Dark Multiverse existed and was created, and now we have a story where in that story the bad thing won. Like, oh my god, okay, I can't wait.
Remember, you can't spell metal without meta.
Oh, very good.
Batman Annual number 5.
Remember last week when I asked about do we know what's going to happen with the clown hunter?
I do. And remember when I told you about the cover of Bruce glowering over him?
Yes, yeah. It turns out it's this cover. It's Batman Annual number 5. This is where we find out. So,
yep.
Yeah.
All right, Brian, pop quiz. Do you know why New Mutants number 14 is on my list to call out?
I do not.
Because there is a new writer taking over. Vita Ayala.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yep. On the edge of Krakoan society, the New Mutants are on the loose in the wild hunt. Going big, blowing things up, and combining powers to see who gets crowned king of the mountain. But something lurks in the trees, something old and hungry, and its favorite prey is young mutants.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, what I am considering a legally obligated purchase for anyone who likes comics, All New Wolverine by Tom Taylor Omnibus.
I will 100% second that recommendation.
Laura Kinney is the best Wolverine.
Yeah.
The end.
Yeah. That series was fantastic. Get it? Yeah.
This week's books to read there. This week's books to read. Department of Truth number 1. I don't think we've talked about this one. We may not even have caught this one in Solicitations.
I don't know that we have.
This is an Image book from James Tynion, and its premise is essentially, what if all the conspiracy theories were true?
Oh, right, yes.
Yep. I am super excited for this. Tynion has been knocking it out of the park lately. To the point where he even made a little lapel pin available. That's the Department of Truth, like, CIA-style logo, and I might have already bought one. Brian,
Yeah.
Avengers number 36.
This is more Moon Knight kicking the Avengers' butt and the whole Khonshu thing. I'm all in. I want more.
Over at Marvel, Shang-Chi number 1, written by Gene Yang, who you may recall from Superman Smashes the Klan, and The Terrifics, and a good run of New 52 Superman.
Yeah.
Also, Superman of China and Justice League of China. Very excited for this book.
Yeah.
And Brian, Dark Knight's Death Metal Multiverses End one shot.
So a couple of things about this. One, it's obviously a Dark Knight's Death Metal one shot, which that's part of it. The other is it's going to answer one of our questions that we asked earlier in this episode, which I did not realize until just now. Because I'm going to list the group of heroes that is banding together. I want you to see if you can find the one that completely sold it to me, and identify the one that answers a question earlier in the podcast. Are you ready?
Okay. Yes.
It is.
I'm here to play your game.
President Superman, Owlman, Iris West, Captain Carrot, and Guy Gardner.
So the one who answers a question from earlier is Owlman, and the one who completely sold it for you, and I knew this was going to be the case from the preview image I saw of him, like, screaming into the heavens after some sort of tragic loss, is Captain Carrot.
Of course. Yeah, I love it. I can't wait. I see Uncle Sam on the cover, too, and some other... Yeah, this is going to be great. I want it.
I personally am still waiting for the Captain Caveman, Captain Carrot crossover.
Oh.
Captain Carrot!
Oh, Alex, why do you tease me with these things?
Because I can.
I want it. Now I want it.
I know. I'm cruel.
Okay.
That's it for this week. As always, our thanks to Chase Parker for our intro voiceover. You can visit our website at panelologypodcast.com. Support us on Patreon at patreon.com/panelology. Get Panelology merch at bit.ly/panelologymerch, capital P, capital M. Or write into us with questions, comments, or whatever at bit.ly/panelologymailbag, capital P, capital M. Someday I'll just make a page on the website with all those links. But until then, and technically even after then, I'm Alex.
And I'm Brian. Go read these comics we've been talking about.